that. As far as the right people not making it, I pulled very close to Jim Costa months ago, and I know that I can beat him, and I know that I can be the right person. And I'll tell you what, the awesome thing about the House, even though we've never exercised this with Costa, is every 2 years you get another election. So if I'm not doing a good job, please fire me. The second thing is, I don't have any interest in re-election. I might need 4 years to accomplish what I want to accomplish, but I want to do as much as I can to make it a better place so that I can have children. And I can't be in there for 20 years and then still have children. I mean, maybe in 20 years I might still be able to have children in 20 years, but I don't want to hold my breath on that. So I'd rather just go in there for the 2 or the 4 and do the best that I can. And as far as Mr. Boehner and changing when you get there, I spent several years at Valley State Prison for women and men as a office tech analyst, a youth force coordinator, several different things. But they say prison changes you, and I can tell you I went and it didn't. So I don't think Washington will change me. I don't play games, I change games. I want to get things done, and so, you know, I would just tell Mr. Boehner, if you want to keep your job, if you want to keep the American people happy, then you need to be on board to get other people in the House to get things passed, to get things supported, to help advocate for things like the Endangered Species Act to be reformed, to come up with ideas that maybe won't win over the Senate, but it might win over voters, and to educate voters on plans that we have as conservatives to chip away at this, and so that if the Senate doesn't want to help us, then those people might be out of jobs, to enlighten the American people that they are the ones that are hiring us, and they are the ones that can fire us. And, you know, I learned a few things in prison, and I don't know if I'll try this out, but, you know, you can always like stick your foot out in the hallway and trip somebody if they don't want to listen. So that's always an option. You know, find a mop, clean the floor, you know, whatever. I don't know, but I'm really tired of politicians. I'm really tired of people making up things and telling us whatever we want to hear. I've got it on video over and over and over again, Mr. Costa saying one thing and then a voting record saying the complete opposite. So if it's different up there, when I'm the one that goes up there, I'll bring back the video camera and I'll show you how it's different. I have nothing to hide. I'm not doing this to make money. I have plenty of opportunities in front of me where I can do that in the private sector. I'm doing this because the government is raining down on the private sector and we need to stop it from within. So thank you.
So I pulled out my military ID card because it's been about 6 months since I got out, but I still carry it because I'm always afraid that a first sergeant's going to jump out and find me, right? I had no problem carrying a military ID card. I have no problem with requiring folks to carry an ID card to vote. Voting is one of the most important things that Americans do, and we should ensure that to the best of our ability, it goes off fair and equitable and smoothly. And ID cards like that is one of the steps that can help ensure that. You know, you talked a lot, sir, about leaders changing. Right? I think every politician who ever gets elected for the first time thinks he's going to change the world. Right? It's all green, it's all roses. And then they get to Washington, D.C., and there's a lot of money there, and there's a lot of old men in suits and cigars and everything, and something changes, right? Something changes along the way. And folks are very bitter about that, right? I'm very bitter about that. In a lot of ways, we're an entire nation of jilted lovers, right? We've loved politicians before, and every single time they break our hearts. Right? So why am I going to be different? Why are we going to be different? Well, I think it comes down to the support system you have around you. Right? It comes down to what I talked about a little bit earlier, is your moral compass. Right? Can you withstand that pressure? Can you remember what you went there to do? You know, a lot of politicians, their job seems to be get reelected. And one of the things about good leaders is that good leaders are constantly seeking out the person to replace them. Now, no politician on earth, I think, would probably subscribe to that theory, right? No one wants to find the guy that's going to take their spot. In the military, which does probably a better job at training leaders than anything, in the military, you are constantly training the man or woman behind you to take your job, right? That's so that if something happens to you, right? You're a casualty on the battlefield, something. The organization can go on without you. No person is bigger than the organization. No politician is bigger than the government. That's the kind of leaders that we need. Folks who are constantly seeking out the person that's going to replace them. That's the kind of leader that I would be. I've been pretty fortunate to have a very strong support system behind me, right? And that includes family and friends, folks who keep me grounded. Right? I know that going to Congress is going to be tough, right? I'm not going in with the rose-colored glasses that I talked about. It's going to be very tough to change things. You're going to have to stick to your guns. Right? Luckily, I've learned to do that. Going to Congress is going to be tough, but it's not going to be any tougher than going to Baghdad or Kirkuk or Kandahar and doing a job and bringing my soldiers home. Right? I'm thankful for that experience to give me the strength to do this next thing. The first thing I would tell the speaker is that people are hurting in the Central Valley. We are hurting because of lack of water and lack of job opportunities. And Congress needs to get together with the Senate and pass some legislation that will allow for folks to have jobs and will allow for water to get to our farms and get to our communities. Right now we're playing partisan politics with the issue of water. Right? Regular folks think about water every single day, every single year, whether we have water or we don't have water. Ask a farmer, every year they are thinking about water. Politicians are only thinking about it right now. Where have they been for the last 15 years? That's the first thing that I would talk to Speaker Boehner about. Thanks.
Thanks again. The truth is, when you get to Washington, D.C., you need to be laser focused. And you need to be laser focused on what the Valley needs. You're a representative of Merced, Madera, and Fresno. You have to go there with the idea of what you're going to accomplish and how you're going to accomplish it. And we throw out words like, we need to fix our water crisis. We need to fix our immigration crisis. We need to fix crime and unemployment. But the truth is that when you're going to advocate for a position, you need to understand what the rules are, and then you have to have specific suggestions to how to fix something. You know, with water, for example. It's not enough to say, we have a water crisis, we need more water. Well, how are we going to amend the ESA, the Endangered Species Act? What specific provisions can we change? Well, I can tell you that, you know, the Exchequer Dam, which is right out here, this is the Lake Merced River that goes into Lake McClure. They want to raise the spillway by 10 feet. Okay, that's just a spillway. That's something that I would talk to Boehner about, because I think that he would understand that, right? Hey, the people of Merced are hurting because we can't raise a spillway by 10 feet. Okay, it's those common sense things, right? Because good ideas win. That's what I know as an attorney, right? When I go advocate for my position, I don't go and say, hey, I want this, or, you got to convict that guy. So what, Steve? You got to come there and say, you need to convict this guy because X, Y, and Z. And you have a plan together. You know that evidence says what it says. And that's really where you got to be. You got to get into the details. So when you go talk to Boehner or anybody else or the other side, good ideas win and specific ideas win. And you have to have somebody in Congress that understands the details. And that's the kind of issue that I like to do. And I can tell you, sir, that I've had the opportunity to stand up in front of some scary people in my life and in my career. First I was in front of how many of you guys know the judges over here in Merced? Anybody been in front of Judge Quall? Yeah. You know Judge Quall? I had my first trial in front of Judge Quall. Scary guy. In fact, my dad actually came. I was living at home. I'll tell you a quick story. I was living at home. My dad came to the courtroom, watched my closing statement, and the phone rang, and he kicked him out. Kicked my own dad out of court. And I had to stand up there and continue to argue. I've also been in front of Marine colonels, right? The judges and the court marshals, scary people. Been over to Afghanistan and seen some scary things over there with SEAL teams. Seen some scary things, and I didn't change. I've been in front of federal judges. If you've seen, if you read the news, Judge Wanger, Judge Hyder's over there. There's a bunch of judges over there. Scary guys. I've been yelled at by those judges, but you got to stand up for what you believe, and you got to do it. Judge O'Neill almost came off the bench one time because I stood up for what I believed, and it was the right thing. But you can't back down, and you have to have somebody that has experience with that has the maturity level to do that. Everybody's mentioned support. I have 3 kids. and I have a wife, and I have a mom in town that's praying for me, dear God, all over the place. But if I can't go to Washington D.C. and then come back and look my 3 kids in the eye, and so that they know that their dad's doing the right thing, it's not worth going in the first place. Thanks.
Hi. Mark is worse than his bike.
That's right.
My name's Bob Nutcher. My family has been in agriculture here for 60 years. I've actually got a different question for each one of you. Steve and Mel, you guys talk about your military experience, and that's, what qualifies you with the leadership skills. What other experiences do you guys have that qualifies you to represent us? Ms. Botello, you mentioned earlier that you were polling 1% behind Jim Costa. I'd like you to talk about who ran that poll, if you'd be willing to release the poll results to the other campaigns so that we could take a look at that poll. And then, obviously, Mr. Teixeira's not here, so for you, I don't know your name.
Sir.
Okay, why hasn't Mr. Teixeira been at any of the debates, and where is he tonight? Those are my questions.
Well, I can be brief because I think that I've spoken to some of these points before. I obviously served 6 years in the military, which has been it was a great building block to get to where I'm at. But that's just one building block that I've had. 6 years in the military, the overseas experience, obviously fantastic. Also, as I mentioned, I think having an advanced degree, a legal degree, a JD, I think is important in the one, because you're going to be writing laws and you need to understand their implications on businesses. And you also need to, particularly with the water issue, you need to realize this is how they're going to be challenged, right? So you need to understand how people are going to attack the laws that you pass. I understand that. Also, as in private practice, I think is critical, because you have to appreciate what the effect of laws have that come out of Washington D.C. have on businesses in Merced. We don't need, we have high unemployment in Merced and the Valley. We don't need any help. Okay, so we need to be able to recognize when something like the Affordable Care Act or something like along those lines is going to have a detrimental effect on our community, and then we need to recognize it and change it. So I think private practice, the military, as well as being a federal and state prosecutor have all helped me and been building blocks to enable me to do this job and do it successfully and effectively.
So for the last 10 years, I have served in the military. After high school, I was in high school during September 11th, during those attacks, and that's what inspired me to want to serve the country. So for the last 10 years, that's what I've done. And as an officer in the military, not every job is the same, right? In the military, you have lawyers, you have doctors, you have infantrymen, armor. I was an armor officer, right? A combat arms guy. So I trained my men and women to go to war, accomplish our mission, and come back. Now, within that, there were a myriad of other things that we did, right? It's not all shooting and moving vehicles and communicating, right? You're feeding your men, right? You're taking care of their families, helping them with finances, right? In a lot of ways, even at the age of 22, as a young, second lieutenant, I felt like a counselor at sometimes, marriage counselor at times. I've got a young soldier and his new wife, and I'm, trying to talk them through the perils of early marriage, right? I've never been married, right? As an officer, as a combat arms officer, I really was a jack of all trades, right? You did whatever had to be done so that you could ultimately achieve your mission, right? And that mission for us was putting down insurgents in Iraq, putting down insurgents in Afghanistan, and training local security forces in those countries to take responsibility for themselves. Right. So the job in Iraq, for instance, that I had at one time was I was in charge of about 200,000 Iraqis, their security, their lives, their jobs in southwest Baghdad. Right. I was in charge of the American forces in that area. So we developed local government structures. We helped local business owners get on their feet. We went after bad guys, right? Other jobs that I had included logistics, right? Feeding the troops, moving equipment. Right, so the military does give you a wide range of things. Have I been in the private sector for the last 10 years? No. I worked at McDonald's in high school. All right, I've earned minimum wage. Right, minimum wage is a great wage for people who are entering the workforce. Right, I never expected to feed a family when I was working at McDonald's. But since McDonald's, I have not worked in the private sector. My dad owns a little business in Merced. He's worked in business for the last 40 plus years. But I haven't. I was serving my country. We've been at war. And it was my part, it was my duty to take part in that. I would have loved to have worked in the private sector for the last 10 years. Believe me, it would have been much better than sucking sand in Iraq or Afghanistan. But that's not what called me. All right, we've been at war and we need good young Americans, brave young Americans, to sign up and serve and protect this country. I served with a lot of them, and they're pretty impressive. Thank you.
Well, about the polling, my consultant is Scott Wynn. He's out of Stockton. I don't know who he had do it. Like, I probably could find the email if I could find it through the 500 million emails I've received since the end of January. But we did an initial poll that I paid for, and I'm assuming was done accurately. They said that the map showed, which I don't even think I have a copy of the map, but I think they showed it to me,